Hello and welcome to the Chesapeake Bay Food Web lesson. This is geared towards middle schoolers in the area of life science. The students will use the internet to gather information on a particular plant or animal found in the Chesapeake Bay. After completing their research, they will present their findings to the class and create a class food web using these organisms. Once the class food web is completed and discussed, the student will create a PowerPoint presentation representing the effects upon the food web if their researched organism should disappear. The Kansas Science Standard, which is addressed, is Standard 3, Benchmark 4, and Indicator 1. The National Education Technology Standards are also listed below. The instructional objectives of this lesson is that the students have an understanding of the interdependency that organisms have within food webs. The students will be required to complete a research guideline on a plant or animal which is found in the Chesapeake Bay. Students will give an oral presentation of their findings to the class and create a class food web of the Chesapeake Bay. Students will then create a PowerPoint presentation. To prepare for the lesson, you should bookmark several sites that the students can use as a resource. Some possible sites are listed here. You should have some yard or string. The students are required to create or print out a picture of their organism that they have researched. Once they give the oral presentation, they will attach this picture to a display area, and the string or the yarn is going to be used to show which organisms consume which. If your display area is a dry erase or a chalkboard, you can just draw the lines in using either chalk or a dry erase marker. You should have copies of the research guideline to pass out to your students, and a list of organisms for the students should be available. I like to do a random drawing, have the animals on little slips of paper and they can reach in and randomly draw one. Gives a sense of excitement. Students love it. And of course, you will need to schedule the computer lab for internet access. The students are researching using multiple online resources which will construct a PowerPoint presentation. Some adaptations for special learners. Now for the LD student, you can always give them some extended time or just pair them with another student. Your ESL students, you may give them the option to do their PowerPoint presentation perhaps in their native language. Of course, the stipulation would be probably if they present that to class, they will have to present it in English. And if you have students who have difficulty with oral communication, you can pair those students up with another student. And you might need to coordinate some extra computer time for students who don't have internet access at home. Surprisingly, you would be surprised how many students at home actually don't have internet access. And I can attest to that from my own personal experiences. Also, the gifted students, I think it'd be a great idea if the gifted students researched a food web of a certain region that they've studied in social studies or in geography and create a presentation to show in that class of that food web. Assessment and evaluation. Well, the students will research the organism that they choose, and they will have to use the internet and the bookmark sites to perform this research. They will have to complete the research guide in order to get credit for this section. The student also must give an oral presentation, and in that oral presentation it must as a minimum include the organism's name, what it eats, and what eats it. Also, the student must either create or print an illustration of their organism because they're going to be putting it on a display area to create the class food web. And then the student will create a PowerPoint presentation with a variable, with the idea that what would happen if the organism that they researched would happen to disappear from the food web. And the student should illustrate that all populations in some way within that food web will be affected. For the instruction of the lesson, of course, you've got to prepare ahead of time. You've got to make a list of plants or animals that are found in the Chesapeake Bay. Here are a few items or organisms that are found in the Chesapeake Bay. You explain to the students that what they're going to do. They're going to be investigating and researching an organism. They're going to create a class food web. You do the drawing for the organisms, and then you hand out the guideline sheet, you give them a plant one if they choose a plant and an animal one if they choose an animal one. You explain the research guidelines. You may show them, if you have a digital projector, go to the sites that they'll actually be going on and kind of show the bookmarks and how they would navigate through several of these bookmarks. And then once, you need to let them know ahead of time that once their research is completed, they're going to orally present their findings to the class. If two students are researching the same organism, they may be paired up and work as a group. Then, once the student or the group of students gives their presentation on their organism, they will put the created illustration or the picture that they printed out of their organism on the display board. And then once all of the students have presented their presentation, you go ahead and use the string or the yarn to create a food web. Then, once the food web is created and you discuss a little bit about the food web, you explain to the students that they're going to produce a PowerPoint presentation on the circumstances of what would happen if the organism that they researched would happen to disappear from the food web. The activity should be done, of course, once you've already talked about perhaps environments or populations. This is supposed to take, or approximately should take, about 3 days to complete. It could go a little bit longer depending on your student's expertise in PowerPoint or navigating through the internet. Scheduling the computer time for me is rather a tricky thing because we have limited resources in our particular school, and you have to really plan a little far out in advance. And you can't deviate from your schedule at all, otherwise your time may be hindered a little bit. Whew. And here are 3 references that I used for this lesson. Thank you.